Nice.
In the face. Yeah.
Makita,
Makeda Weaver, DC Water.
good morning. Cello.
Cello Itasovich in Redondo Beach, California.
Oh, nice. And Scott.
Scott Haskins from Seattle, co-principal investigator, supporting you all.
Excellent. And I'm going to put Dan on the spot. He just joined us. Dan, if you can hear us, we're doing introductions. Do you want to just say good morning and where you're at this morning?
Good morning. I'm in Kansas City and glad to be here. I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late, but
No worries.
yeah, good to reconnect again and looking forward to the call.
Excellent. Good. Maybe if I'll just keep letting people in and we'll keep doing introductions here. Let's see. Patricia just joined us. Patricia, if you can hear my voice, we're doing introductions. And if you could just say good morning and where you're at this morning, that would be great.
Oh, good morning, everyone. My name is Patricia Taylor Lytle. I'm currently working at home in sunny, actually Maryland, but 30 minutes outside of DC, if you're wondering.
Excellent.
And yeah.
Great. Thank you for joining us this morning, this early hour. All right. Well, that's it for introductions for now. I might take a break midstream and welcome people who join us a little bit later. I'm going to share my screen and just go over the agenda. So welcome to the second meeting of the UAIM Change Management biweekly conference call. And today we're going to just do some roundtable work. I want to mention that this call is being recorded. Thank you, Cello, for the technical support in the background. So for folks who miss, they can certainly view this video when they have time. So we are going to do a roundtable session. I'm not really going to keep this PowerPoint up very long, but I did want to just orient you. Hopefully you all received my email last week, and in that email was a request for you to be thinking about your challenges, your methods, and some behaviors. And so we're going to spend a chunk of time in each one of those areas doing a roundtable discussion. We'll spend a few minutes at the end in a wrap-up discussion and be thinking about how what we just spoke about, what we just shared, can inform our work plan. And then any questions or comments for our next meeting. We've already gone through introductions, and just for a quick review, I want to just remind everyone that this was what we basically kind of the basic skeleton of a work plan, and it's what the other teams are going to be referring to and starting from. So lit review, assessment of methods, models, characteristics of effective change management, and methods to close the gaps. So that's a reminder of what we've have as a starting point for a work plan. But my hope is that today, by talking through your biggest, most urgent change management challenges, looking at specific models and methods and tools that you're deploying, and identifying the behaviors that help change and those that kind of get in the way of change. So by looking at these three areas, that will help refine that outline that we looked at for our work plan. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and want to say thank you to the folks who had a moment to enter in some ideas into the table. We just offer that as one venue to gather your thoughts and share them. Cello and Scott will be keeping track of these issues for us as we talk through them. And again, the meeting's being recorded, so we'll be able to populate the table fully with all of our discussion today. So we gave you the opportunity to write some things down in advance. If you didn't get time to do that, no worries. And we'll have time in today's discussion to get your ideas and have some discussion about it. So by looking at the submittals that we received, really things kind of boil into 3 or 4 categories. They all kind of blend together a little bit, but there's certainly some acknowledgement that leadership, buy-in and direction is essential. There's also a reference to staff. And so it's the whole organization and their literacy around change. Another theme that came up was priorities, and priorities kind of in the moment and priorities over time. So really figuring out a way to make those decisions and to be clear about them. And then related to that, of course, to both of those items is communication, how we communicate and the different methods that we use. And there are a lot of challenges with that. I mean, there were a few other items that talk about outdated systems and our silos and those things, our organizational structures. But I think it really falls into kind of the leadership / staff bucket, priorities, emergency, urgent priorities, and then long-term vision, long-term goals, and then the third bucket, communication. And so those are just what was submitted. Those might not be the buckets we go with. That might not be the buckets that we use through this discussion, but to warm us up to these ideas, I thought I would put those on the table. And I guess I'd like to open it up now to some discussion. And I don't know if anyone would like to go first, but I would like to go all the way around the table and ask to just this first round, just talk about our greatest challenges. Again, we'll be taking notes and tracking these issues. So do I have any volunteers for anyone? Ryan, look, right away. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for leading us here and introducing the topic today. I think, I entered some things in there and they were things that, as part of my the program that I work on in strategy, performance, innovation, and research and innovation, that I'm personally thinking these are important, right? These need to change, or this needs to change. We need to change, or we have a framework that we're implementing, and we're trying to move the organization towards, higher performance or towards strategic goals, right? But what I'm wondering is, what I'm thinking is, how do we know what needs to change, right? Like, or when do we need to change, right? We're in an adaptable system, right? So we're kind of we kind of know we might say, hey, we're trying to get to this goal. But it always kind of shifts. The direction that maybe we're heading might shift. And I've been thinking of it like, you're in your car and you go off the side, and you have your GPS, you have your Google Maps on, right? And you're kind of driving your car and maybe you take a wrong turn and it's like recalculating, you're like, oh, okay, now I got to turn left over here and then get back on track again. And that's kind of what happens a lot. But so I think the questions are like, it really does come from the top, but how do we get that clear communication of like, these are the things that need to change, and you're working on the right, as an organization, we're moving in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that was an okay start. I might just be
absolutely.
Rambling.
Yeah, so identifying what needs to change and clearly communicating it, and then I think you added on also when, which is an important ingredient. So thank you for that. Anyone else?
I can go.
Thank you.
This is Jessica from Loud and Water. I think just a couple things for us. Our utility is only 61 years old now. So one of the big challenges for us is kind of converting the mindset from focus on growth to focus on planning for rehab and replacement in the future. So I think that's a big shift that our whole organization is really having to start thinking about, and it's just a major change of mindset for us. And kind of along with that, we have our asset management program, which is new. It's only 2 years old. So we're, kind of along the lines of shifting that mindset is trying to gain acceptance of the program and the purpose of the program, and going from more of a let's get the work done and keep our system operational perspective to we need that. We need to collect data. We need to use that data to make decisions for the future. So I think just a lot of new programs for our utility, a lot of just a different way of thinking that the entire organization needs to kind of go in that direction. And I think we're doing okay with that, but it's going to be a continual change management effort for us. And so I don't have a great approach. I'm trying out different ideas right now, but I'm hoping to learn and get help to build a more steady methodology as we move forward.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So changing the mindset, I think, is really important. And in your case, going from growth to maintenance, and in addition to that, having more awareness. I love the point about not just getting the work done, but having more awareness about how, and collecting the data and being more intentional. It isn't just a matter of mindlessly executing. It's what is the context that's informing how we execute. So that's great. Thank you, Jessica. I do see a few more folks who have joined us. Anyone who did not do an introduction in the beginning, would you like to just say good morning and where you are this morning?
Yeah, sorry, I'm late. Wu from Metro Vancouver. And I can chime in on the topic. So unfortunately, I couldn't access the file that you sent us.
Oh, sorry.
The spreadsheet, I have issues with the Microsoft. So I mean, but I mean, it was clear in the email the three things that you were asking from us to collect. So I kind of want to chime in and sort of echo what Jessica was saying about the mindset. I think the biggest sort of challenges that we're facing, at least in asset management and other programs, was related to the culture and the sense of complacency that they have been operated in certain way for so long time, and they're not really willingly change their behavior and the way of doing the business. I think that's the biggest sort of a hurdle for us to convince them there's a value of doing a proper asset management, proper planning, and setting up proper strategic goals and move forward. Like they're so with limited resources, sort of it's sort of automatic for them to focus their effort on putting down the fire, operational fires and others that they have accustomed to for so many years. So I think the biggest challenge is to how do we communicate? This is what Ryan was saying as well. Like how do you communicate the value of certain changes, certain directions they're proposing, to the levels that to the level where the implementation is actually happening. Like I totally agree with the leadership is important, but then we cannot just force people to do certain things if they don't have the fundamental buy-in from their inside, right? So I think we're kind of trying to balance those two by making a proper and effective communications to the people. So I guess that's important, and also the priority / versus urgency. Like how do we balance those two and make the best value out of it, especially limited time and resources for our stakeholders.
Don,
Great.
we have 3 hands up. Joseph, I think, was the first one who put his hand up.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. And Joseph, do you want to go next?
Actually, I was the third person, so I don't know if the other 2 people want to go first. I don't want to step outside.
Please go ahead. It's fine.
For what I see in our organization is the unlike Loudoun, we've been around since 1854 as a public utility. So that's a very long time, and a lot of time for people to get entrenched in what they do, and so that's a good and a bad thing. I mean, it's a gift and a curse when you have people that have been around for 30, 40 years. The good part is there's institutional knowledge. You can take advantage of that, but the flip side is those people are probably the most resistant to change, as we all know. But the culture that I've been sort of getting exposed to is there's almost there's a tendency to value connections over competence sometimes, and maybe tenure over talent. And so it would be great, and there are many cases where you have people that have been here forever that are actually very talented. So you can have both. It's not necessarily a either or proposition, but sometimes it is, because we have a lot of young people that are hungry, that are interested, that are knowledgeable, that want to learn. But our system right now really favors tenure. So I see people like that, the young that are interested in becoming, long-term value add, components, who will go elsewhere, right? Private sector or other utilities, and so changing that mindset amongst the leadership, even though we all say the same thing, that we value talent, it really requires some fundamental changes to the way that we recruit and hire. So to me, that's the biggest thing, because it really goes outside the area of control within my organization. It really requires the support and the participation of forces outside. So I think that's by far the toughest challenge. But then one other thing is also, when you start a change management process, and I think I mentioned Carter's 8-step process that I kind of lean to, you're building urgency and building a coalition and what have you. Well, then somebody leaves, right? So you build that coalition, and then 2 or 3 people are gone. So this high turnover is definitely not our friend. So it's kind of ironic, because you want new blood, but at the same time you want people to stick around and see the change all the way through. And striking that balance is what makes it really interesting.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I really appreciate those comments, and I love that you have a positive attitude, that it makes it interesting. Certainly, that is what it is. Makeda, do you want to go next?
Sure. Pat and I actually work closely together on a lot of our change management projects, and I love hearing what everybody else is going through, because it's sort of it almost feels like a group therapy for change managers. We're all dealing with similar issues. One of our challenges, and I'm just thinking as we're talking, is we've been around at DC Water since the 1800s as well, and our functional areas seem to we're very siloed, so they operate as their own units, right? So engineering is a totally different world than customer service, totally different employee profile, totally different regulatory requirements, all that kinds of things. So that adds in a totally different layer when we talk about alignment, because our internal stakeholders have such different goals. I mean, even our board subcommittees, they're totally different conversations happening from leadership. They're focused on very different things, I would think. And I don't know if Pat has anything to add, but getting everybody on the same page, I think, is sort of our ask. And so that's what we're working on.
Yeah, that's great. How many employees does DC Water have?
I think we have around 1,100, and maybe, and Pat, jump in, don't we have like about a couple thousand?
No, you're correct. You're correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a lot of space to have groups and silos. Absolutely. Thank you, Makeda. That's great. I really appreciate the need to speak different languages as we put forward our message about what change needs to happen. Pat, did you want to add anything?
The only thing I can say is buy-in. We tend to, especially in this industry, forget we're people. And focus on more of the technical side of things. But the reality is that with any change, the technical pieces can be completed. But if people aren't willing to participate in the change, they can sabotage it. And then it won't be as effective as it needs to be.
Right. Yeah, great. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it. Dan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, let me just say I'm super encouraged by you guys, because like you said, Makeda, I'm hearing very similar themes to what we've got here and what Joseph said, Jessica, Chris. I mean, so I'll try not to repeat the same thing, but we too are an organization in transition. We have been in existence for a long time. We're the older part of the city. And for the longest time, we had no money and just had to focus on, duct tape and baling wire to keep everything running. And everything was very much, projects by crisis, urgent and just get it fixed kind of mentality. Well, we've had quite a bit of turnover, at least across the organization, really, but definitely here in our engineering group from top to bottom. So our director level for the engineering department, all the way down to our entry level project managers, we've got a number of new people, but also mixed in, as Joseph said, the folks that have been here for 25 years. And I'm in a role to try and kind of to help kind of bridge the gap on that, and also do development with our newest people to get them ramped up and on board and try and keep them. And so I guess I'll say the challenge I'm seeing is developing and implementing some level of structure, intentionality, and getting alignment, so that we're kind of all moving in the same direction in terms of building a new approach, a new culture that's more asset management centric and focused, data driven, but also maintaining some level of flexibility too, to adapt. As like Ryan said, we get off on a detour and need to get back on track again.
Yep.
So.
Yep, need to reroute. Yep.
Just want to urge folks who, if you raise your hand, if you want to lower it so we can react properly when people raise, their hands on new things. That's all.
Great, thank you. Makeda, did you have more you wanted to add? No, okay. Your hand is still raised on my screen, but Mia, we haven't heard from you. Do you want to add anything to this conversation?
Dan already brought up all the issues we are having at KC Water. The division I am representing is the repair division. The biggest challenge we have is retaining people, high turnover.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. Ryan, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to add anything else?
Well, sure, just one little thing.
Yeah.
Going first always, all these good ideas come up, and then I get
yeah, no problem.
So the couple of things that I just wanted to interject that I've been thinking about is, it's all related, but having your communications being simple, right? So simple communications, but simple, like even performance measures, simple vision, like all these things, be the best, whatever it might be. And then it's like, what page are we on? We're page, but what page, right? What page are we getting on? I think that's kind of what I was getting at. But I'm also thinking, what works, right? So what within your organization works? What is sustainable, that's functioning and it's good? Why? Why is that working? And then try to figure out, how did that get into place? How did that become the way that we do business or the way that we work? And try to, re-engineer that process to think about change. So.
Yep, that's great. Good. Okay, well, we've got a great list of big challenges, and I really look forward to kind of bringing these all together in a format that will be easy for us to look at and agree to. So thank you very much for that. That's awesome. So I'm going to ask that we shift over to tools and methods. Cello, did you want to add anything?
Just something, a couple of really quick points. One is that the people experience very similar things, and that they are seeing that there's a certain predictable pattern in the challenges that they face, would imply that it's a systemic problem. It's not it's not that Joseph is raising completely different, because when Joseph was talking, I saw like 5 heads nodding. And so I think the realization is about how difficult this is, because it's not when something is applicable to a number of different situations, it means that there's some inherent systemic barrier that we have to be aware of, at least. That's one point. Yes, Ryan.
I think it was a thumbs up.
Oh, okay. Well, your hand went up. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to say, and the second, so since it is a systemic and very difficult, sometimes it may seem overwhelming, but perhaps as we look at methods, we can see ways to achieve progress without boiling the ocean, and doing it in such a way that although all these things are interconnected, but perhaps instead of thinking about changing the culture, which is maybe changing the behaviors first, and maybe certainly start with the behaviors that are most damaging and stuff like that. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's great, Cello, and that transitions, I think, into the next roundtable. So I really appreciate the point that methods can help us break it down into bite-sized pieces, or whatever your analogy is, that it is more manageable and not so overwhelming. So who would like to start on methods and tools that people have used to help assist with change? Ryan, is your hand still raised from last time, or do you want to start? Okay, great, thank you. Does anyone want to start on tools or methods that they've used?
I'll go again.
Thank you, Jessica.
So I wouldn't say I have a particular method that I'm following right now, but just what I've found to be most effective is when we're implementing something new is to make sure that we are actually engaging those that are going to be affected by the change, instead of kind of having it go from the top down. Yeah, one of the things that I'm starting to see is working well, and I'm trying to do more of, is the types of programs that I'm working towards all affect, or mostly affect, those in the field. So I'm trying to spend kind of more time in their shoes and shadowing them and experiencing sort of the pain points that they experience, so that we can make sure that what we're trying to implement isn't going to make things worse, and that we kind of understand firsthand what the complaints might be when we try to implement the change, so we can just be better prepared to address it. Haven't done as much of it as I would like to at this point, but I feel like that's where I see the most value, and I'm trying to do more of that personally, just to kind of understand those challenges better. When I see it for myself, it just all come together a lot better. So.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jessica. Dan?
Yeah, I'm going to build off of that theme. That's a great point, Jessica, on engaging those that are affected. One of the things, I was just thinking to something I've done recently with, we're implementing a design professional evaluation form, just a simple thing. But really just not trying to get it perfect on the first pass, but getting it to a point, and then testing it out with key stakeholders. So in this instance, we piloted it with one of our engineering division heads who volunteered to do that, and then one of our design professionals who also kind of volunteered, and that gave us an opportunity to just test out the process, see how it worked, again, get some engagement from the people who are directly affected, and then we found some issues, and that gave us a chance to make some adjustments before we tried to roll it out to our entire department. So trying to start small, and then learn from it, and then build from there.
Great. Thank you, Dan. That's awesome. Yosef?
Yeah, so I think as far as tools, and I I think it was last week that we talked about this. From my perspective, trust is big, and at the risk of being repetitive, it's something that's going to take a long time for us to, for me to build that trust with the team. But I see some progress in there. But what I've also found is, when we talk about the culture, especially in public utilities, there's a fear of making mistakes. That keeps people from venturing out. So we're not a startup. We're not a private company. So I get it. We all kind of have a regimented way of doing things. But I think in a lot of ways that fear is what keeps folks from kind of coalescing behind a vision and moving forward at the same clip. So what I've done is I've tried to open myself up to critique. So what 6 months in, I had the various divisions schedule time, come in, tell me how these 6 months have been. What's been your experience with me? And it was kind of terrifying at the beginning because I knew that some of them had raised eyebrows as far as my approach. I'd come in there and have articles from HBR about management and leadership and all these things. And for a lot of people that are focused on the day-to-day, that stuff that's not their world. They're not interested.
You don't have time for that. Yeah.
And that's basically what the feedback that I got was, thanks for all that information, but what are you going to do to make my life easier with procurement, with HR, with getting trained employees? What are you going to do? All that to say, I think that sort of exposure and allowing myself to be critiqued, hopefully models, and that they can do it for themselves and give their direct employees, their teams, an opportunity to critique them, be open to critique, be open to being told that they made mistakes, and like Ryan was saying, just recalculate and go a different way if need be.
Mm-hmm. Boy, I love that, Yosef. That's awesome. That's really great. Makeda?
Yeah, the feedback is so important. And one of the things I wanted to share that's been useful for us, in addition to sort of touching base and incorporating the end users for any change, or the end users who are affected by change, is to focus on the middle management in those specific departments and units. The leadership can be sort of sometimes hard to get on board and get aligned and get with the program sometimes. With the project we're working on now, sort of working closely with the mid-level management, frontline supervisors, they have closer relationships with the leadership in their division. So it might be that when we reach out to a department head, it falls on deaf ears. But if we have a conference call with a bunch of mid-level frontline managers in their division, they can put not necessarily pressure more effectively, but that message coming from them seems to land more sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost like they can turn around and implement it more quickly than having to go through. Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Very similar experience at BES, by the way. Very, very similar. I had my sights set on the leadership, really frustrated with that, and then ended up going to the next level to really get traction. Yeah. Thank you for that. And Dan's nodding, yes. Let's see, Ryan, and see anybody else? Let's see, and Chris. So Ryan, you want to go next?
Thank you. Okay, so the tool that I've been thinking about here is actually like having time to think deeply, like deep think. So providing 4, 6, 8 hours of uninterruption, maybe longer. I mean, some of the best work or ideas, have probably been generated over almost what people would consider a week off, from work, to be able to really focus. That allows you to develop content and a plan, right? So, and that maybe that gets to the value in content over connections comment that was made earlier. And then I found that maybe it's, of course, it's like wearing multiple hats, right? So am I a frontline worker? Am I a middle supervisor? Am I leadership? But working within a system I think where you're kind of in the middle is helpful, where you're able to listen to the workforce and get that information to the people to make decisions, and then get that back to the people who are asking for change or direction, or there's some need, and being clear communications. So having a really good relationship with your public affairs and communications is really that's kind of the pathway that we're seeing some success.
Yeah, great. I love time to think deeply. That's I totally agree. Let's see, Chris.
Yeah, so in terms of tools, like we don't have any like unique tool that we borrow from, from the industries or from academic paper or whatever, but the sort of mentality that we're using to enable change management is to communicate the issues of a certain things instead of jumping into solutions and try to communicate and educate on the solution itself. So one example is we are doing this software implementation on the capital planning side, but then we do have a change management sort of committees. They go around different groups and doing this roadshow. And basically the content of the roadshow is, okay, here are a bunch of issues that we are facing in capital planning, and what others are thinking, and trying to collect feedback on that issues. And so that's sort of the one stream that's going, and the other stream, of course, we have a development stream and we have a training stream as well. But we try to target the and clearly hear and reflect the issues of different people and different stakeholders are facing around the tool that we're trying to implement, so that they are engaged earlier in the process. And also we try to get them a sense of, okay, our voice is being heard and being reflected in the tool that we're developing in a separate streams. And we haven't completed that process yet, but then after, we're going to use the training to sort of circle back to the roadshow comments, try to sort of complete the picture of, okay, we heard your problems, this is how we address your problem, and then these are the changes that we're expecting to see for the next year or so, right?
Wow, that's very powerful. So are those the only three streams? Listen to the issues, develop solutions, and then train on the solutions?
For now, they are. And actually, we have fourth stream sort of touching on those steering committee level, which is more of a leadership level. But our folk there, for the other level, is more of a sort of informing and the communication around the progress. But really, we try to focus on the roadshow and the training so that the end user have the most impact on the projects that are working on.
Yeah, wow, that's great. Thank you, Chris. Scott, you have your hand up?
I was just going to comment, just listening to people, that there seem to be a couple different perspectives. I mean, one has to do with what Joseph was describing in terms of interpersonal, one-on-one, types of the relationship that can support change and improvement, where he calls in people after a certain period of time, and it's probably just as intimidating to them as it might be to Joseph. But basically, how do you have courageous conversations with individuals around change that is needed? The second thing, with groups, and you've described, all of you, just a number of different techniques that you use. And I was going to just ask the question of Makeda, because I know she's a little bit familiar with it, but in last time we talked about, well, what are tools that we use in order to facilitate change in groups? And we talked about ADKAR as being one. I think you use the change acceleration process as well. Maybe you just want to comment on that, and others could chime in.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I think this goes back to silos as well. We found that leadership, and Pat, feel free to jump in with any of this, but leadership in different divisions also had, when they came to the organization, had different ideas of different types of models they wanted to use. So we found on the business operations side, the strategic planning side, financials, that those folks were really tied to ProSize AdCar model. And so from the operations side, and I know you had mentioned you'd worked with Bijou in the past, they use the change acceleration process model. And now, so there was sort of dual training going on at both sides again, which goes back to sort of siloed organizations. So what we have been really doing is sort of, looking at each project we're working on and seeing what applies for each instance. Both of them seem to have similar components, in terms of engaging, building awareness, engaging people at all levels throughout the organization, which is key. I think one of the things that we're learning, I think that over communication is sort of a cornerstone of both approaches, that just when you think you're over communicating, you got to over communicate some more. So that is one of the things sort of we're getting the chance to see how they're playing out in real time. So, and again, Pat, I don't know if you want to speak to that anymore, but I know that folks are very excited about the models, to have something to work off of. Our workforce generally really likes models. One of the downsides sometimes to that is anything that goes off plan, it's, then it's total catastrophe, which sometimes folks are really linear. And so that is also, how do we sort of build flexibility in those plans and processes? I think is something we're looking at too.
That's great. Pat, did you want to add anything?
No, I didn't. Makeda covered it.
Okay.
I was off on mute waiting, but I was like, no, she got it. She has it. So we're good.
Great. Thank you both. Cello?
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest that I see a couple of things. And for example, things that are very, very helpful and things that are very, very corrosive and hurtful. And I looked at the slides that Joseph was kind enough to post, and I think they showed a range of things. So the two things that Joseph mentioned, one of them is trust, the other one is fear of making mistakes, is in my mind on the opposite sides of a spectrum that has on one side really corrosive impact, on the other side it's really critical. And although I am aware of the models like EdCar and others, I think it is, regardless of these structured approaches have a much lower chance of working if some of these fundamental behaviors are not in place. So I think they have to go hand in hand. We can't go completely unstructured, just like, trust me. Many years ago, I remember that Snake and Jungle Book that had the trust in me kind of dance,
Yeah.
And and it is, trust is something so fundamental, and it's so tough to get, and it's so easy to lose that I think it's very good to look at both structured methods and also the fundamental underlying things that could disrupt, regardless of what method you use. So I'm out.
Great.
100% agree. And sometimes I found that the structure is a double-edged sword. We have a lot of folks who are, again, that very linear. Anytime things go off plan, then we lose the plot a little bit. So I think that relationships and building sort of those adaptability and trust beforehand is really the foundation.
Great. Thank you. Chris, your hand is still raised. Did you want to add, or is that from last time? Yeah. Okay. So great, thank you. So we've got about 5 or so minutes, a little bit more than that, and I knew that the agenda was a little ambitious, but let's go ahead. I think Cello again has made a nice statement that transitions us into this realm of behaviors, and let's in one more round here of positive behaviors you're looking for, and behaviors that are challenging. Corrosive is a good term. And I do want to just say apologies that the spreadsheet did not work for everyone. We'll make sure that we get that fixed, and when we call for your content, that we make sure that we test that and make sure that that works. So let's go ahead one more round here around behaviors. And Scott, did you want to start?
No, let's go ahead with that. I was going to try to make a statement of looking forward what we might be doing, but let's finish the behaviors
Okay.
like you're suggesting first.
Okay,
That was a
great.
good plan.
Okay. Anyone want to go first?
I just need to head off, so I just wanted to say goodbye to everybody and look forward to reconnecting again.
Okay, great. Thank you, Yosef. Have a good day.
I'll kick it off.
Thank you.
I think adaptability, not taking things personal is pretty important. Trying to be mindful. And then I think another thing that's important is follow through, and what we have a problem with is just documentation is really important.
Great.
Communication.
Thank you. Cello and Scott, you both have your hands up.
Oh. I'm putting mine down. I forgot
Okay.
to put it down.
I just wanted to say it's really excellent that we have this kind of participation and engagement on this call. It's very encouraging. I think that as we look into methods, we have a temptation. We want to look at places where we can learn from. Where can we learn from? What has somebody else done that has worked? And I am a little bit cautious about some. I think that there are some things we can learn from private industry, but there are also some things that are clearly, in my mind, not transferable from private industry to the environments that we work in. So I think as we pick methods and look at ideas that would help us, we have to find the right balance between. We have to find the right places to look for inspiration. Because if something worked at Facebook, it doesn't mean that it's going to work in a wastewater treatment plant. And we have a different history, different heritage, different focus, different staff. So that will be a challenge. And as far as and one thing that has intrigued me is that there are some things that we do that everybody hates. The best literature says is totally productive, and we can't stop doing it, like performance evaluations, which are, which reminds me of the time when I lived in communism, when the things didn't work, everybody knew it, but nobody wanted to say anything about it. Mm-hmm. So I think if we uncover what Yosef said is, come and tell me how I'm doing. That's a fundamental shift to a process that's actually today not working very well. And the best thinkers are telling us this is not the way to do it, but we all have to do it. So, finding which things we can challenge, which things we can improve is going to be very exciting. So I'm off.
Great, thank you, Cello. So we're getting close to the end of our time here. Any closing thoughts on behavior that we want to make sure that we include in this discussion? And when we package this up, we'll give you an opportunity to add anything that's been missed. But any closing thoughts? We did talk about behaviors when we talked about challenges and methods, but anything that hasn't been addressed yet? Dan?
Well, I guess I wanted to give a shout out to Yosef. I know he's not on the line right now, but his comment really struck me that we're starting in a culture and an environment that may be more fear-based. And I've seen that here in our culture, and it's important to recognize that, like where you are, because, all these positive approaches are important, but if don't understand that people are maybe fearful to even try or to step out, we've got to create an environment that allows for that. So, and I also loved his being the example by saying, hey, I'm inviting you to come give me this feedback, and this is safe space to do that. So anyway, that just really struck me. So I think that was a takeaway from this call.
Yeah, that's great. Totally agree. Scott?
Well, I think we are starting to wind down on the time, and I just wanted to throw out there have been such good participation here and a lot of good examples. I think looking forward, it would be very cool if we had volunteers to basically share a change experience. And the change experience could basically take the themes that you started out with, Dawn, around leadership and staff and buy-in and all of that, or it could be priorities and deciding what changes to do, or it could be around communication, and to basically say what's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you, or what didn't work around a specific change that you were promoting. And it sounds like everybody's involved in some way. Even if it gets down to what Joseph was saying about, hey, with my staff, I want to deal with change and improvement and trust building and honesty, and let's have some behaviors that we can all, agree on. It could be changing to that kind of environment, or it could be that, hey, Dan, you're trying to go implement changes to your CIP process, and how are you going about that? And what's working for you in terms of change and the systems and the tools or the methods or the communication that you're using. And we could go right down the line because you've talked about it, but I think it would be useful, for us to think about, in a future session here, just for somebody to do a little, 3-minute case study, 5-minute case study, just on your experience, and what's worked.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Are you suggesting for the next meeting that we prepare for that?
Yeah. It was just came to mind. I think you were probably going to head in that direction anyway, Don. But there's a lot of rich experience that people here have, and like Cello said, you don't have to go to the private sector or to just a pure model to go. But the actual experience that you all have is as rich as it gets. And so if you could share that, I think that would be good for next time.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, I'll aim for communication on the alternate Wednesdays between when we meet so that we have a game plan of what we're going to be doing in our agenda for the following meeting. I like that idea. Cello, you have your hand raised.
Very, very quickly. So, yep. Makeda, I see that what would be, for example, really wonderful if next time you could say, okay, this was our experience with ProSci, with EDCAR. This was, maybe just to, because it would be helpful for people who haven't been exposed to these methodologies. So maybe we can just look at them, not saying this is the ultimate solution, but at least so everybody's aware what these different structured methods are. So that was my comment.
You're willing to do that. Thank you, Makeda. Appreciate that. Anybody else want to offer up a case study? Okay, well, I'll maybe put a call out in an email. I also could do a version for BES, but we'll get an agenda out. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Have a great morning. It was really good to see you, and I look forward to connecting in 2 weeks. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.